We are recording, which I think is like my catchphrase now. It's got to be the worst catchphrase I've ever come up with. Not that that's a very high standard generally, but hello everyone. Welcome to the Cutlass Viking workshop for the Old Sword Club. For those who haven't met me before or don't know, I'm Tim. I'm the instructor person at the Old Sword Club, which is now currently convening in my back room, in whatever rooms you are in your houses. So we're now distributed about the place, I guess. But yeah, so today we're going to be looking at 19th century cutlass. So one of the questions I actually got asked quite a bit when I was promoting this was how different is cutlass from saber? Short answer is the techniques are pretty much the same to the extent where even though there are points in the 19th century where the British Navy and the British Army have different saber manuals, for the most part they have the same, they have the same methods. So, in the early part of the 19th century, it was whatever the Anglo school was doing. And after the death of Henry Angelo, a guy named Henry Toohey basically took over sort of creating the standard, first the Navy cutlass method, and then his method was adopted by the Army. And then through the rest of the 19th century, this was about was about 1865, I believe, although someone, feel free to correct me on anything, I try to be as knowledgeable as I can be, but I'm not infallible. But yeah, then basically after Toohey's method was adopted, it was routinely criticised by a lot of British saber fencers who said it was too simplistic or that it wasn't very effective. But no one could really agree on what to replace it with until the really late 1800s, when it started to be replaced by particularly continental fencing methods. So first the Army adopted an Italian method of fencing specifically for its officers, but then over time sort of continental saber and cutlass basically took over from the domestic British system, mostly just because that was the preference of like a few key individuals who were charged with setting up the method and also setting out what was the standard method. And it was also routinely criticised by everyone else. But the problem was no one could really agree on what the British saber method should be. So it just kind of got arbitrarily sort of chosen. But yeah, so we're looking at cutlass. Cutlass is relatively similar to saber. The method we're doing tonight comes primarily from two manuals, from two authors. Alfred Hutton, who wrote like 4 or 5 manuals on saber. Of those, the two they primarily use are the Swordsman and Cold Steel. But I'm also going off a guy named R.J. Allenson Wynne, who wrote manuals of self-defense, but in these he includes not just weapons like boxing, wrestling, but also military weapons like saber, quarterstaff, bayonet, because the division between civilian and military martial art was a bit hazy in the period, in a period of like really intense militarism and imperialism in late 19th century Britain. So the method is pretty much applicable to both saber and cutlass. Just like when I say cutlass, people's ears prick up because it's like a cool pirate weapon, whereas sabers not so much. So usually I focus on cutlass because it gets more attention, but you're more than welcome to, if you've got a saber, you're more than welcome to use that. If you've got a cutlass, use that. The other weapon that's actually this method also works for is this thing, which is a single stick. So it's just a stick with a basket hilt. This one is hardened leather, but they also made it wicker. And this was a very popular form of fencing in Britain probably up until the late 19th century. And then it's still around really up until the 1920s, but slowly goes into decline. It gets replaced by just sort of what eventually becomes modern saber. I'm going to pause recording at this point, just because I'm going to pause recording between each section, just to make it easier for me to upload these.